The grand tapestry of human connection is often woven from the most ordinary threads, starting with casual introductions that bloom into shared memories, laughter, and occasionally unexpected lessons in accountability. The story of Avril Matthews and Anadi Mia began in the warmth of the month of May in the year 2022. It was a time when the days were growing longer, and the social calendar of the city was vibrant with gatherings. They met through mutual friends at a lively social evening, an occasion filled with introductions where names blur together, yet certain individuals stand out. Avril was a young woman with a careful eye for detail, while Anadi possessed a vibrant, spontaneous energy that drew people toward her. Within a few months, their acquaintance solidified into a comfortable rhythm. They began seeing each other on a regular basis, meeting every other weekend or perhaps every couple of months, navigating the city together as young companions exploring life, sharing dreams, and enjoying the light-hearted innocence of youth. The transition from acquaintance to close friendship seemed natural. They shared stories about their careers, discussed their personal philosophies, and leaned on each other for advice. However, even the smoothest roads can experience sudden jolts, and the ultimate test of their bond arrived on the evening of April 1st in the year 2023. It was an evening that started with the brightest intentions of entertainment and camaraderie, yet it would conclude with an incident that echoed all the way to a dignified courtroom. The evening commenced when Avril and another close companion decided to pick Anadi up from her residence to enjoy a highly anticipated dinner together. The atmosphere inside the vehicle was light, filled with the anticipation of good food and excellent conversation. They arrived at the restaurant as the night was unfolding, settling into a comfortable booth. For hours, they enjoyed an array of dishes and a couple of relaxing drinks, letting the stress of the week melt away. As the clock crept past 10 o'clock and advanced toward 11 o'clock, their conversation turned into an animated debate. The three companions found themselves discussing the intricate nuances of modern romance and human behavior. They debated from varying perspectives how a man might react to a specific emotional situation, with Avril viewing the matter through one lens and Anadi seeing it through another entirely. It was a passionate but harmless intellectual disagreement between modern women. In the midst of this lively banter, the atmosphere became highly energetic. Anadi, filled with expressive excitement, began to engage in what she considered play fighting. It was a physical manifestation of her spirited personality, an attempt to emphasize her points with dramatic gestures and affectionate nudges. At one point during this playful interaction, Anadi playfully bit her friend, a gesture that Avril found unusual but dismissed as mere overexuberance at the restaurant table. When the restaurant began to wind down its service around 11 o'clock, the trio decided that the night was still young. They proceeded to a nearby nightclub to immerse themselves in music and dance. The venue was alive with flashing lights and a rhythmic bass that resonated through the floorboards. For close to 2 hours, they danced, sat down to rest, and rose again whenever a favorite melody filled the air. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, their social circle expanded when a mutual acquaintance named Haji arrived at the nightclub to join the festivities. Now a group of 4, they continued to enjoy the vibrant ambience. Time slipped away unnoticed amid the laughter and motion. When the nightclub finally prepared to close its doors at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, the group realized that the high energy of dancing had left them incredibly hungry. The group piled back into the vehicle, with the unnamed friend taking the driver's seat to safely navigate the quiet, early morning streets. Their destination was a local McDonald's restaurant, which had just transitioned into serving its early morning breakfast menu. They purchased an assortment of breakfast items, the warm aroma of comfort food filling the car as they drove back to the apartment belonging to Avril. The plan was simple and wholesome. They would gather in the living room, share the meal they had just bought, and gradually wind down after an unforgettable night out on the town. Upon arriving at the apartment complex, the group exited the vehicle. In the crisp morning air, Anadi engaged in another brief moment of playful physical banter, which again included a light, playful bite before they all walked through the front door. Once inside the safety of the apartment, the dynamics shifted into a relaxed domestic scene. The group prepared to gather in the living room to eat their breakfast together. However, Avril stepped into her adjacent bedroom to rest for a moment, stretching out comfortably upon her bed. Anadi accompanied her into the room, sitting closely on the edge of the mattress, while Hadji and the other friend remained in the living room, waiting for food to be arranged. The bedroom was quiet, a stark contrast to the thumping bass of the nightclub they had left behind. On a wooden dresser or nightstand position directly in front of the bed rested the mobile phone belonging to Anadi. Suddenly, a distinct chime broke the silence of the room. A text message had arrived on the phone of Anadi. She stood up from the mattress, walked around the perimeter of the bed, and retrieved the device from the surface of the dresser. As she looked at the screen, her face illuminated with pure excitement. The text message was from a gentleman she had been speaking with, someone she held in high regard, and the message was incredibly positive, filled with an urgent desire to share this joyful update with her companion. Anadi called out the name of Avril, trying desperately to capture her immediate attention. Avril, feeling the exhaustion of the late hour, remained still on the bed and did not respond right away, driven by an impulsive burst of enthusiasm and wanted her friend to read the screen immediately. Anadi made a split-second decision. She stood at the foot of the bed, while Avril lay before her. With an affectionate, underhanded motion, Anadi tossed a mobile phone across the short distance toward Avril, intending for it to land softly within her grasp or upon the blanket. But physics and fate had a different plan for that underhanded toss. The heavy mobile phone sailed through the air with unexpected velocity and precision. Before Avril could react or lift her hands in defense, the solid edge of the phone struck her squarely in the mouth. The impact was sudden, sharp, and shocking. The force of the object violently displaced her front teeth, pushing them backward into her gums and altering her smile in an instant. A collective gasp echoed as the reality of the accident set in. Hadji, who had just walked toward the hallway to utilize the bathroom, stood at the open doorway and witnessed the final moments of the scene, hearing Anadi cry out that she was merely trying to get attention before seeing the phone leave her hand. Clutching her mouth in absolute shock and pain, Avril rushed past Hadji into the bathroom to assess the damage in the mirror. The sight was distressing. A young woman's vibrant smile had been severely compromised by a moment of careless enthusiasm. The days that followed were a whirlwind of medical consultations and emotional strain. Avril sought immediate treatment at a local hospital emergency room to address the trauma, resulting in an initial medical bill of $985. The medical professional stabilized her, but the specialized dental restoration required to fully repair the structural damage was estimated to cost $4,600 for the immediate procedures, with total long-term costs projected to rise well over $10,000. The accident cast a heavy shadow over the once thriving friendship. A series of electronic mail messages and text conversations ensued between the two women. Avril presented the medical estimates, explaining profound physical discomfort she was enduring and the necessity of the dental work. Anadi, who was earning a minimum wage salary, felt a deep sense of panic regarding the financial burden. While she acknowledged in her messages that the incident was entirely an accident, she urged Avril to seek out a significantly cheaper dental practice to lower the costs. When Avril insisted on receiving quality professional care for her mouth, Anadi requested that they meet halfway and split the expenses, citing her inability to afford the massive accumulation of bills. The inability to reach an amicable agreement ultimately led them away from private conversations and into the formal halls of resolution. The resolution unfolded inside a prestigious courtroom, where case number 3057, titled Matthews v. Mia, was called to order by the court officer named Kelly. Presiding over the matter was Judge Judy Justice, a jurist renowned for her piercing intellect, sharp wit, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. The atmosphere in the courtroom was serious, yet calm, as both parties took their places. Avril stood at the plaintiff podium, her demeanor anxious but determined, while Anadi stood at the defendant podium, visibly nervous about the legal proceedings. The judge began the inquiry by establishing the foundational facts of their relationship, demonstrating that consistency and clarity are the bedrocks of any credible narrative. When asked how long she had known the defendant, Avril initially hesitated, offering vague approximations about meeting through mutual friends around the beginning of the previous year, suggesting perhaps the month of June. The judge, with her characteristic precision, corrected the chronological inconsistency, pointing out that the beginning of the year would mean January rather than June, which represents the exact middle of the year. The jurist gently but firmly reminded the young woman that the questions would only grow more difficult, emphasizing the absolute necessity of getting one story straight before seeking the intervention of the law. With focused concentration, Averill corrected her recollection, confirming that they had officially met in the month of May in the year 2022, and that the unfortunate incident had occurred approximately 1 year later, on the first day of April in the year 2023. The judge then scrutinized the frequency of their visits, highlighting how phrases like every other month and every other weekend carry completely different meanings, urging the plaintiff to speak with absolute clarity. Once the timeline was properly established, the court turned its attention to the specific events of that fateful morning. Averill detailed the journey from the restaurant debate to the nightclub dance floor, the arrival of Hadji, the late-night excursion to McDonald, and the final gathering at her apartment. When Averill began to describe the moments inside the bedroom, her description of where the phone was initially located became slightly confused, prompting the judge to reference the official written complaint. In the written documentation, Averill had stated that the phone beeped, and Unnati stood up to grab it from the dresser, whereas her verbal testimony suggested the phone might have already been in Unnati's hand. Recognizing the stress of the courtroom environment, the judge reminded the room that there are never multiple versions of the truth. There's only one absolute version of reality. She encouraged the young woman to take a deep breath, visualize the night clearly, and provide the exact sequence. Averill acknowledged her written statement as the absolute truth, explaining that the phone had indeed been retrieved from the dresser. To gain a complete and balanced understanding of the event, the judge turned her gaze toward Unnati, inviting the defendant to explain her perspective of the bedroom scene. Unnati stepped forward and spoke with complete honesty, stripping away any lingering confusion. She confirmed that her phone had been resting on the nightstand dresser. Upon receiving the text message from a gentleman she was actively conversing with, she became incredibly excited. She walked around the bed, retrieved the phone, and eagerly relayed the good news to Averill. When Averill expressed curiosity to see the text, Unnati admitted that she held the phone and, in a swift, underhanded motion, tossed the device toward her friend. It was at that precise moment that the object struck Averill in the mouth, causing a severe dental injury. With both testimonies aligned, the central truth of the matter became undeniably clear to the court. The incident was not a purposeful assault, nor was it fueled by malice, anger, or deep-seated jealousy. It was, as both parties ultimately agreed, a profoundly foolish and irresponsible accident. The judge took a moment to educate the courtroom on the fundamental nature of civil liability and personal accountability, delivering a valuable lesson wrapped in common-sense wisdom. She explained that accidents are, by definition, events that occur without an intention to cause harm. When an individual operates an automobile and accidentally strikes another vehicle while parallel parking, there is no malice involved, yet the driver remains entirely responsible for repairing the damage caused by their actions. Intent does not erase consequences. When an individual causes an accident that results in a physical injury to another person, the law dictates that the responsible party must balance the scales by covering the resulting expenses. Addressing the defendant, the judge noted that Unnati owned electronic mail messages, and offers to split the cost proved that she inherently understood her own culpability from the very beginning. Averill was a young woman who faced years of potential dental complications if her mouth was not properly repaired by skilled medical professionals. The total cost of the required treatments was well documented and exceeded $10,000. Therefore, with a sharp rap of her gavel, the judge issued a final judgment in favor of the plaintiff in the absolute amount of $10,000, officially adjourning the court session. Following the adjournment, both women stepped out of the courtroom to reflect upon the experience, each carrying a different perspective on the closing of this chapter in their lives. Unnati expressed a sense of relief that the truth of it being an accident had been validated, though she remained reflective about the steep financial cost of a single careless gesture. Averill, while grateful that the legal system had provided the means to repair her smile, recognized that some friendships are meant to exist for a specific season, yielding valuable life lessons before completing their course. The essence of the entire sequence was beautifully summarized by an insightful observation regarding a timeless piece of parental wisdom. The commentator recalled a childhood memory involving a father's response to a minor car accident during teenage years. The teenager had come home, admitting to a small accident, and casually suggested that we would need to pay for the repairs, inadvertently using a collective pronoun to share the blame. The father, who had been relaxing comfortably at home in his pajamas, watching a television program, immediately halted the conversation. He asked his child whether the accident was truly a shared responsibility, pointing out that since he was completely uninvolved in the driving, the accountability belongs solely to the person behind the wheel. That profound lesson resonates deeply within the framework of adult life. It is precisely what a young person needs to hear to develop true maturity. When an individual becomes a defendant in the theater of life, they must adopt a mature approach, acknowledge the mistake, recognize that even though it was an accident, the responsibility to make things right rests entirely on their shoulders. Accidents are not intentional, but they require accountability. It was not the fault of the plaintiff that she was struck in the mouth, and therefore, the responsibility to restore what was broken belonged entirely to the person who set the object in motion. Ultimately, justice was served, a young woman's smile will be restored, and an enduring lesson in honesty, integrity, and personal responsibility was etched into the hearts of everyone involved.